Okay. Picture this. Earth. Giant Battle Royale. 8 million species. One map. No respawns. And somehow, it has been running for 4 billion years without crashing. No patch updates. No developer fixes. Just working. Chaotically, messily, beautifully working. That is Ecology. And by the end of this video, you are going to understand why the whole thing is basically one giant game of Jenga where every piece is connected to every other piece. And someone, spoiler, has been pulling pieces out. If you want to see how this wild game of survival plays out, hit subscribe right now so you never miss another deep dive into how our world works. Trust me, understanding how close we are to a total system crash is absolutely worth staying for. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's start at the very beginning. The smallest possible question. Where does energy actually come from? Like, not into the sun is a giant nuclear reactor way. Although yes, that is true and kind of insane. I mean, where does the energy come from that is powering the deer eating grass right now? Where does the energy come from that is powering the wolf about to eat that deer? Where does all of it come from? N? The answer is embarrassingly simple. Plants. Literally just plants sitting there in the sun doing photosynthesis. They take sunlight, water, and carbon dioxide, stuff that is just floating around for free, and they turn it into sugar. Biological currency. Energy stored in chemical bonds, ready to be spent. We call these guys producers, and they are the absolute foundation of everything. No producers, no game. Server offline. Everyone goes home. Now here is where it gets interesting. When a grasshopper eats that grass, it is not eating the grass. It is stealing the grass's energy. It is robbing the sugar bank. And we call that grasshopper a primary consumer. A herbivore. An energy thief with 6 legs. When a frog eats that grasshopper, the frog is a secondary consumer. When a snake eats the frog, tertiary consumer. And on up this chain until you get to apex predators who eat everything and answer to nobody. This whole structure, producers at the bottom, consumers stacked on top, is called a trophic pyramid. And it is not just a cute diagram. It is a law of the universe. And like most laws of the universe, it has a brutal consequence hiding inside it. Here it is. Wow. Every time energy moves up one level of that pyramid, from grass to grasshopper, from grasshopper to frog, roughly 90% of it disappears. Gone. Lost as heat. Used up in metabolism. Wasted in the 10,000 tiny biological processes that keep an animal alive. Only about 10% makes it to the next level. This is called the 10% rule, and once you understand it, you will never look at a food chain the same way again. So think about this. If a field of grass contains 10,000 units of energy, by the time that energy reaches a hawk at the top of the food chain, you are left with maybe 10 units. 10. Out of 10,000. That is a 99.9% loss. The hawk is paying an absolutely absurd premium for the privilege of being at the top. And this is why this is the part that sounds obvious once you hear it, but that you have probably never actually thought about. This is why there are always more herbivores than predators. It is not because predators are rare or special or hard to make. It is pure math. There is not enough energy left at the top to support a lot of bodies. A single acre of grass can support a whole herd of rabbits. But that same acre, running its energy through rabbit bodies first, can only support a fraction of a fox. The pyramid is not a metaphor. It is an energy budget. And the budget is brutal. Okay, but wait. If energy is constantly leaving the system, escaping as heat at every level, shouldn't the whole thing eventually run out of fuel? N. Like a phone battery that only ever drains? N. Shouldn't ecosystems just die? That is exactly the right question. Hold that thought. The answer is yes. Ecosystems would die. Except for one thing. 2 things, actually. Decomposers and cycles. Here is the thing everyone forgets about food chains. They do not end at the predator. They end at the decomposer. The bacteria, the fungi, the impossibly unglamorous organisms quietly dissolving every dead thing on the planet back into its basic ingredients. When a wolf dies, it does not just disappear. It becomes a buffet for microbes, who break it down into nitrogen, carbon, phosphorus, and a bunch of other chemical building blocks. Those chemicals go back into the soil. Plants absorb them. The cycle restarts. This is the plot twist. Energy flows through ecosystems in one direction. Sun to plant, to animal to heat, gone forever. But matter? What? Matter goes in circles. The same carbon atoms that were inside a dinosaur are probably in your body right now. That is not a metaphor. That is chemistry. Carbon cycles. Nitrogen cycles. The water cycle. These are the recycling systems that keep the whole operation running, and without them, the planet would have run out of raw materials for life about 3.5 billion years ago. Let's zoom into the carbon cycle, because it is the one that matters most for where we are headed. Plants pull carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere and lock it into their bodies as sugar. Animals eat the plants and breathe the carbon back out. When things die, decomposers release the carbon. Volcanoes release carbon. The ocean absorbs carbon. Rocks store carbon for millions of years until they erode. The whole thing is this incredibly intricate balancing act that has been keeping atmospheric carbon more or less stable for millions of years. You already know where this is going, but we are not there yet. First, populations. So, okay, you have got your energy. You have got your cycles. Now you have got organisms actually living, eating, reproducing. How does a population grow? N. Like mathematically, mechanically, what actually happens? Start simple. Imagine you have 2 rabbits. They reproduce. Now you have 4. Those 4 reproduce. Now you have 8. Then 16. Then 32. This is exponential growth, the famous J-curve, and it is terrifying in how fast it escalates. If nothing stops it, a single pair of rabbits can theoretically produce millions of descendants within a few years. The math does not lie. The math is actually kind of horrifying. But obviously populations do not just grow forever. Something always pushes back. There is only so much food. Only so much space. Predators show up. Disease spreads faster in crowded populations. These are called limiting factors, and together they create something called the carrying capacity, the maximum population size an environment can sustainably support. We call it K, because scientists love single letters. When a population hits carrying capacity, growth slows down and flattens into an S-curve. The logistic growth model. It looks calm. Almost polite. Like the population and the environment reached a handshake agreement. And in stable ecosystems, that is basically what happens. Populations oscillate around K like a lazy sine wave, never too high, never too low, unless something breaks. And here is your midpoint moment. Here is the thing that should actually make you stop scrolling for a second. In 1859, a man named Thomas Austin released 24 wild rabbits in Victoria, Australia. 24. He wanted to hunt them. He thought it would be fun. Australia had no natural rabbit predators. No disease the rabbits were vulnerable to. The climate was perfect. There was grass everywhere. It was an exponential growth buffet with no speed limit. Within 10 years, there were millions of rabbits. Within 50 years, there were billions. They ate the vegetation down to bare dirt across entire states. Native plants disappeared. Native animals that depended on those plants disappeared. Soil erosion accelerated. Other species went extinct. An entire continent's ecosystem, one that had been fine-tuned over millions of years of coevolution, was destabilized by 24 rabbits and one guy who thought it would be fun to have something to shoot at on weekends. that is the awe moment. Not because it is shocking that rabbits reproduced. Of course, rabbits reproduced. The awe is in the interconnectedness. Every species in an ecosystem is not just living in that ecosystem. It is holding it together. Remove one species, add one species, and the ripples do not stop at the next link in the food chain. They cascade. They amplify. The whole web trembles. The technical word for this is a trophic cascade. And once you see it everywhere. When wolves were reintroduced to Yellowstone in 1995, after being hunted to local extinction, scientists expected the elk population to drop. Obviously, wolves eat elk. That part was predictable. What nobody fully predicted was what happened next. The elk changed their behavior. They stopped grazing in open valleys where wolves could chase them down. They moved. And because they moved, the valley floors, which had been grazed bare for decades, started to grow back. Willows, aspens, cottonwoods, vegetation that hadn't been seen in years. Beavers came back because beavers need willows. Beavers built dams. The dams created ponds. The ponds changed the water table. More wetland plants grew. More bird species arrived. More fish species returned to the rivers. The rivers themselves changed course. More vegetation meant less erosion, more stable banks. Wolves literally changed the rivers. Not by touching them. By scaring elk. That is a trophic cascade. And that is the core idea of ecosystem stability. These systems are not just collections of species. They are networks of interactions, and the interactions are the point. The species are almost secondary. It is the relationships between them that create the stability. It's what keeps ecosystems stable. And biodiversity. The more species you have, the more redundancy you have. If one species disappears, another can fill its role. It is like having a backup generator. The more backup generators, the lower the chance of a blackout. But when you start losing species through habitat destruction, pollution, climate change, or just importing 24 rabbits into a continent that never had them, you are pulling Jenga pieces. The tower holds for a while. Then it doesn't. Here is the part where it all snaps back to the beginning. Remember the opening? 8 million species. One map. No response. The reason this system has run for 4 billion years without crashing is not because it is stable in the way a rock is stable. It is stable in the way a juggler is stable. Constant motion. Constant adjustment. Populations rising and falling. Carbon circulating. Energy flowing and dissipating. Decomposers quietly doing cleanup. Predators keeping herbivore populations in check. Herbivores keeping vegetation from overgrowing. Every organism pulling against every other organism in a dynamic tension that somehow, collectively, adds up to balance. Take out the wolves, and the rivers change. Add a rabbit, and a continent breaks. Pump extra carbon into the atmosphere, and the cycles that have been running for millions of years start to slip. The system can absorb a lot. It has absorbed asteroid impacts, volcanic winters, ice ages. It is remarkably robust. But robust is not indestructible. And right now, the Jenga tower is having a rough time. Which brings us to the open question. The one ecology cannot yet answer. The one that is genuinely, actually unresolved. We know ecosystems can recover. Yellowstone recovered. Forests regrow. Species come back from the edge of extinction. The planet has bounced back from 5 mass extinctions. But here is what we do not know. Is there a tipping point, a specific threshold of biodiversity loss or climate shift, beyond which an ecosystem cannot recover? And not takes a long time. Cannot recover. A point where the feedback loops that normally restore balance instead accelerate collapse? And we have models. We have theories. We have some terrifying data points. But we do not have a definitive answer. We do not know exactly how many Jenga pieces you can pull before the tower falls. And we are pulling them faster than we can count. The planet has been running this Battle Royale for 4 billion years. It is extraordinarily good at the game. The question is whether the newest player, the one that figured out nuclear reactors and the internet and how to put rovers on Mars, is smart enough to stop accidentally flipping the table. That is Ecology. Now go text someone. If humans are technically just another species in this giant Jenga game, are we destined to be the ultimate invasive species that collapses the board, or can we actually engineer our way into becoming its caretakers? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button to stay tuned for the next round.